You are now in the Reality Capture Network.
Welcome to the Reality Capture Network, and today we have an exciting conversation going on looking at the future of technology within buildings and smart information and AI, and we're just discussing a little bit of everything. So thank you for joining us today, and we would like to let you introduce yourself to our network.
Thank you, Matthew, and good morning. My name is Salla Eckhardt. People previously knew me as Salla Palos, but I got married this week on Tuesday, so this is a nice introduction for the industry to associate the face with the new name, and I will make all the updates later on, but super excited to be on this video log and talk on your podcast about the future of our industry, AECO industry.
Yeah, well, and thank you for joining us, and congratulations on getting married.
Thank you.
So, yeah, why don't we start? I usually like to start these by giving a little bit of introduction about yourself. Where are you originally from? How did you get to, into this industry in general? And then maybe we can move into also a little bit about your current role.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. So, people can probably pick up that I have a little bit of an accent.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Finland, and that's where I finished my master's degree in architecture. But while I was studying that degree, I was also expanding it to civil engineering and structural engineering, construction management. And after I graduated with the degree in architecture, I continued my studies in construction management and writing a PhD thesis of it. I haven't finished that, but the topic in that dissertation was building information models and the building information model processes and the tools. And thinking now back, it was the beginning of what the industry now knows as the digital twin.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved to United States about 5 years ago, and I had my career already in the R&D track and innovation track back in Finland. I was leading European Union funded smart city projects, and I did a few years of architectural design and structural engineering just to get the flavor of what I'm missing out on, as I had already steered my career towards the digital construction and digital building lifecycle. And when I moved to the United States, I joined general contracting, and I worked in general contracting for a few years. And before I joined Microsoft, I was the director of innovation and emerging technology for one of the largest privately owned general contractors here in the United States, looking into emerging technologies such as laser scanning and drones and all that good stuff.
Yep.
And now I work in the Microsoft internal global real estate and security organization. I'm a director in our Center of Innovation and driving forward the digital building lifecycle.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've been on a fun journey, but really, focused around everything that we're interested in.
Yeah.
Our entire network is really focused on what are the new technologies out there. Some of them have been around for a long time, yet there's a lot of people who still don't even know that they exist. Laser scanning in and of itself is, to us at this point, kind of a simple understanding of a measurement technology. Yet there are a lot of people who don't know it's there. They're out there with tape measures. And so we want to use this platform as an opportunity to introduce people to the technologies. And then there are a lot of people who know about most of the basics within reality capture and are looking for what's next. What are the applications out there that these are being used within different firms, within different industries, and what can we do to help even push that further in improving spaces, improving facilities and buildings, and integrating AI and smart technology. So sounds like you've been on that track for quite some time.
Yeah, it's coming up to 20 years now.
That's awesome.
It's been a wonderful journey.
That's awesome. Well, let's jump in and let's start with this. What are some of your current obviously, again, you've been in it for 20 years, like you said, you know about a lot of the technologies. What are some of the current technologies that you're focused on within your group?
I'm really looking into how we might leverage the intelligent cloud and intelligent edge and bring the data that is being created in the physical environment for the benefit of creating the digital replica of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's if we can get the data flowing and break down the silos that traditionally exist, I see that there is a lot of benefit that is impacting the work of architects and engineers, general contractors, manufacturers, everyone in the digital supply chain.
Yeah.
So that's the overall framework. And I developed the digital building lifecycle as the new business model for the AECO industry roughly a year and a half ago. And that basically creates the overall framework for how we might be going forward as an industry and enable the profitable growth for everyone and also the discovery of new products and services as the industry is digitizing.
Yeah, I see that, and I'd love to hear a little more about that. So, in our industry, a lot of people are focused on the technology itself and not the bigger picture. So, I think hearing how do you see capturing data within a building and then taking that through that life cycle? Just in kind of a basic explanation, what are some of your thoughts there that those who don't know anything about this would kind of understand?
Oh, that's a good question. And that kind of brings me to the framework of how I think about technology. And for me, it is a framework of people, business, and technology. It all begins with people. And
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, people are decision makers. They are the creators of data, but they are also the consumers of data. And whatever decisions they make are impacting the profitability and productivity of their business. And the technology is the foundational support for enabling those educated decisions. So depending on what decisions are being made, then that will define what kind of data we are collecting and how we might be then refining that into information and then clustering the different pieces of information into intelligence.
Sure.
Once we know how to apply it, it becomes knowledge. And that way we will know exactly which technology to use.
Yeah.
But thinking about the complexity of the industry, visual data is now emerging as more important than something that is more structured and traditionally documented in charts.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm more focusing on how we might capture the visual data and combine that with both the static and the dynamic data, and that way create a bigger picture and create more clarity.
Sure, sure. Let's within that thought process, let's talk about some of the different hardware specifically, just to get kind of your thought and feedback on, is it something you're using, interested in, or what are some of the things you're looking into or looking for? So maybe starting with LiDAR, with laser scanning, whether it be handheld or terrestrial that's on a tripod base to capture buildings, or whether it's mobile. What's some of your thoughts around laser scanning?
That's a really good question, and thank you. I'd say that depending on what is the scale of the project that people are working on, you might be looking at something that is very light, a small handheld laser scanner, or something that is a bigger, depending on if you are developing a new campus area, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of laser scanning is that you get very accurate data, and it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to consume because you can have the 3D format of what you actually captured. And you can take off the quantities, the volumes, you can take off dimensions. It's already consumable into a lot of building information model tools.
Yeah.
And you can also create the mesh that you can bring into a virtual reality environment or mixed reality environment or augmented reality environment. So the end users have a lot of ways to consume the data about the physical environment in a digital form and
Yeah.
have everything captured so you're not missing out on anything.
Yeah. What would you say? Obviously there's been a lot of different methods for capturing buildings, and some of your focus on real estate and within facilities. What are some of the key importance you think of the increased accuracy of the data doing it with laser scanning versus kind of some of the old methods? What are some of the benefits you see?
This is a very good question for an architect.
Yeah.
Because it was part of my studies to learn how to draw and capture by drawing by hand, depending on which type of building we were working with. And trying to measure everything and draw by hand, there's always the flavor of how does the artist actually capture it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot that is missed out. Whereas with the laser scanning, it's so fast and it captures so much data that it's unbeatable.
Yeah.
You have the evidence captured in matters of basically seconds, depending on how big of a project you're dealing with. And you can always go back and see what changed. Because the built environment, it never remains as it is. It continues to age every day. Things break, things change, you add things.
Yeah.
So using laser scanning really creates a lot of agility and productivity, and it's so fast that I can't imagine any other way of capturing anything unless you want to.
We feel the same.
Photos, they kind of tend to flatten out what you're capturing, but with the laser scanning, you get the 3D, the third dimension, and that's really important.
Yeah. And, we always try to talk with people and explain, because, there's still a time that going out by hand and getting certain measurements is okay. And I think there's also the analysis, which a lot of people are going through, and probably the same for you, is, okay, well, we do have a building and a project we need to do, but what happens when you have hundreds of buildings you need to do, and what is the exact need with that building, and does the cost right now with the different technologies, does it make sense to do one versus the other? Or I think it's definitely still up in the air there. So we always try to explain, there are a lot of different tools, and so trying to make sure people are educated on that path of which tool fits for their need is important.
Exactly.
So you've currently been utilizing some scan data and some laser scanning. Do you have any off the top of your head, any specific challenges that you think of within that technology and applying it?
One of the problems with laser scanning technology is that the file size is very large. You're capturing a ton of data, which then you have to process somehow to make it consumable on different devices. And in some cases, it does pose some issues, but luckily, even the laser scanning, the scanner companies that are developing the physical hardware, they've started to create the software that enables pushing that data already into cloud and processing the data right after it's been captured to be ready for the engineers to consume it. And that way they are already starting to solve the problem and alleviate the pain that might have existed with the older generation products. And as things are becoming more integrated, I think that overall it's becoming a more user-friendly technology overall. I know that there are certification issues as well, depending on which region you're working in. Construction industry is always local, and we have to take into account the local rules and regulations and laws. So that is something that some regions are dealing with, that if you don't have the certified person available, you might not be able to use the technology. And then of course, with the old technology, it was a little bit slower than the current ones, and that ramped up the cost. But now that the technology is so fast and is so user-friendly, I think that the overall cost, value, and worth of laser scanning is becoming very attractive.
Yeah. On the note of scanning and even some of what you're bringing up with, certification and with local people, I'd like to hear some thoughts. Have you found it easy or difficult to find out information about what scanning types are out there, what the pros and cons of them are, finding service providers that do exactly what you need, that have the information? Has that been something that's been easy to find, or is that kind of a difficulty?
That's a good question. I guess that it depends on the regional industry, how much there is sharing of knowledge, how much people can access education, how many different professional meetups there are to enable that knowledge transfer.
Yeah.
But overall, there's a lot of opportunity for educating people more and bringing forward both the benefits and also the growth opportunities of the technology so that people don't have too much bias
Yeah.
and reluctancy to adapt to it and test it out.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things, and that was one of our thoughts behind even starting this, and we're kind of taking it to the next step of not just having this as an educational platform, but we, over the years, have built a really large network of companies that do reality capture. Some of them have the handheld, some of them have the mobile, some of them have terrestrial. We've seen a challenge over the years of once companies find one company that does laser scanning, and some construction firms, for example, they find out about scanning, then they're like, well, who do we use? So where do they search? They Google it, they find one company, and they're like, okay, let's just try them out, not knowing where are they traveling from, what type of gear do they have. So we see that as one of the challenges that's holding back some industries from applying it even more so. So what we're trying to do is build out a network of every service provider within the country who has every type of scanner. So as we're pushing education and somebody says, I have buildings in 30 states I need to capture, helping reduce the cost of them implementing the technology by using a network instead of just one service provider who has to travel and all the expense, us helping implement a process to utilize local people, making sure that they're pre-qualified, making sure they have the right type of gear so that all that is going to come together. Is that something that you see as a challenge as well with your guys' thought of, the fact that even Microsoft, for example, is so much as far as assets go, when you look at applying a technology, it's hard to just run with it because of the fact that it's so multi-site, and so many industries and companies that we've worked with have that same challenge. What's your thought about that?
That is a good one. And especially since we have real estate around the world, we operate globally, depending on, again, on the local industry, there might be the resources available or they need to be hired from somewhere else. And when people are talking about reality capture and laser scanning, etc., there might be some flavor differences in how people use the terminology, how they comprehend it, and what is then kind of procured out. So that is one of the challenges that people really have to educate themselves about what they are actually asking for and what they are actually delivering, so that there is no miscomprehension of what is being done. And overall, if the project requires something that is not as high fidelity as some other project, that they understand what that difference is, and that way they know exactly what equipment to use and what kind of a specialist they are hiring to deliver that project.
Yeah. All right, let's see. I've got another one. So, as we're talking about kind of some of the different hardwares that exist now, just on a high level, and we know that there are definitely things, within your guys' work that probably don't want to talk about and can't talk about and share. So just on a high level, if we can think about the different technologies such as the laser scanning, 3D modeling and BIM, virtual reality, augmented reality, drones, could you kind of touch on which of the existing technologies you're kind of pulling into your actual focus?
I'd say that I'm trying to pull them all into the same framework, just for the sake of people having different options of how they want to be consuming the data. And that way we can have the approach of one input, multiple outputs. And it's up to the decision maker that how do they feel confident making the decision that they have to. And overall, I don't see any of these options limiting each other out. They just have a different application to it. And as long as we have the comprehension of what we are doing, why we are doing it, and what are the possible outcomes, we are on the right track. So I'm looking into
Everything.
All of them. Everything that I can get my hands on, I'm innovating and trying to figure out how they can be bridged together.
That's awesome. Um, and this might be a hard question as well. If you could find out that there was a software out there that did something and you didn't know it existed, um, whether it's something that already exists to pull certain information together, or is it, simplifying the process of taking reality capture data into a model, or whether it's intelligently extracting certain information out, what's something that you think would be helpful in that kind of realm?
In that case, I would hope that the software providers would start building more integrations into what are currently the mainstream solutions. And that way, if there are brilliant solutions out there, that they don't kind of get lost
Yeah.
in the masses of opportunities. But overall, that's what I'm talking to the industry quite a bit about, that there's a need for building more integrated systems and I think taking the open innovation approach rather than trying to build something that is very proprietary
Yeah.
and that way limiting the end user's options. I think that there is a great opportunity for highlighting and
Yeah.
bringing the spotlight for the new emerging solutions as well.
Sure. Yeah. What about, I guess, within kind of on the technical side of maybe scan data or models, what's something that you see like doesn't exist yet that would maybe be helpful? Whether it is within like tagging of assets through a building, or automatically giving you some type of analysis. Is there anything that you have on the top of your head on that thought?
Yeah, there's one, and it's very futuristic and fairly like beyond Horizon 3, and it's simulated reality. And I've been talking about it for a couple of years of how we might use reality capture for predicting what might be the foreseeable scenarios in a specific location in the physical environment and that way run visualization algorithms or any kind of modeling tools for kind of creating scenarios of what might be based on the data that we can capture from the physical environment at the moment in this moment.
Yeah.
So that's something that doesn't exist yet. It's probably not in the roadmap of anyone.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of computing power. It requires a lot of big data, and it needs those prediction models and machine learning. But that would be something that I want to throw out there for the industry to tinker and think
Yeah.
about what might be the possibilities if we had that capability.
And that would be really a whole mix of a lot of the technologies in one, of sensors and LiDAR and tracking and just a little bit of everything to make something like that possible, huh?
Exactly. And the reason why I've started to think about it is that there is the continuous megatrend of urbanization on this planet. So how might we actually predict where the growth should be and how we might make it sustainable? And that's why I've started to think about the simulated reality.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think of one of the keynotes from the Autodesk University conference year or two ago, which is also something fun to talk about. Is so many people are scared of new technology. They're afraid that AI and robots are going to take over the world, right? Or that it's going to replace somebody's job. Versus really the opposite is true, where technology is making certain tasks easier or faster or replacing certain portions of a job. But as a whole and as a community, the technology helps us just do more faster. And in one of those keynotes, they were talking about, there's certain places in the world that are out of room for people to live. So the importance of being able to analyze spaces and renovate spaces and expand spaces and design faster and build faster, those are actually way more important than some of us even realize. It's not just a way to create a new job in the United States, but in other parts of the world, it's a much needed implementation.
Hmm. I totally agree. And when thinking about the history of technology, history of industries, and thinking about how the industry 1.0 transformed everything, there was that short gap when people didn't have the need for certain jobs and they were replaced with something else. I see it as an opportunity now that all the industries are moving towards Industry 4.0, that there will be more opportunities for new types of roles, new types of jobs that don't currently exist because the technology is not there yet, or people haven't really realized how to apply the technology for something. But I see a great opportunity for revival and new generation of different types of roles.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's most of my thoughts on as far as kind of the reality capture technology, which I know everybody in our network is interested in. Do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to get into or share in regard to the conversation?
I think we could touch a little bit drone technologies.
Yeah,
It's a keyword that a lot of industry people talk about, and I think there is a need for creating a little bit more clarity on how to use drones, because the drone itself is a vessel that you put a payload on,
yep,
and that's how you can start capturing different types of data and measuring things, and drone itself is merely just the vessel to put whatever
sure.
sensor or technology you want to incorporate into it. So maybe we could hear your
Yeah,
thoughts about that as well.
yeah. So, most of the use case and things that we see as far as drones are still kind of in that simple phase of, a lot of people are mapping existing sites with it. We internally we integrate it into our land surveying work, where we'll map out topography, integrate that with our survey control. And people are using it for the marketing side. I think there's very few firms that are taking it too much further yet with, sensors for industrial sites doing gas leak detection and doing thermal detection. And then, of course, I think everybody's keeping an eye on what else is going out there with FedEx and UPS, and when are drones going to be dropping off your package at your front door. So I think it's a very interesting time. Interested to see how far and how quickly that progresses, because we know it's in the move,
Hmm.
but there are a lot of challenges, of course, with safety and airspace and yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your thoughts around it on maybe what you see
Uh,
application for?
Very similar thoughts, and especially like combining laser scanning with drones and robotics, that what might be exactly the safety and security implications, that if people have to go into environments that are not confined, or they are very high up, or they are below ground, that again technology is supporting people do their job and keep them out from the danger. And as the different technologies that can be attached to the drone or to the robotics, as they are becoming smaller, then we can start capturing even more data that we don't necessarily capture right now, because the human being can fit between spaces, or there are other limitations.
Yeah.
So I see that that is a emerging field, and there's more growth.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about that, I think there are several applications that, and I've seen some technology out there that I think is on its way to being applicable. Is having a drone that has, you see them with the cage around and being able to fly through internal spaces and do some imaging and mapping without walking in. And then even within buildings, you see the same, where people are working on robots that will have the drone sitting on, or the not the drone, sorry, robotics that will have the laser scanner sitting on top of it, that will self map through a building and do the scanning, after hours. And I think there's definitely still challenges there, just like self-driving cars. I think there's the technology is there, but there's still challenges and concerns that are holding it back from being fully implemented yet. But I think that's probably one of the next things to become a real use is not having, with some of this technology, with the laser scanning, not having someone standing there with a tripod, 10 minutes at a time with scans or 5 minutes, having it be able to navigate through and map itself. I think we'll be there, and you'll still have challenges at times. There's projects where they need to map above ceiling tiles, and too complicated of a process to be automated. So there'll still be the manual work, but I think robotics and AI and sensing will become more and more used in the scanning and drone world. And yeah, like I said, even self-driving cars, that's a whole nother topic. Pretty interesting to see how that keeps progressing as well.
Exactly.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you jumping on and joining us today. I know everybody's interested to see what different minds are out there within this space, what technology is being used, what some of the challenges are. I think it's been very universal that every single person we've talked to, one of the same challenges brought up is the size of data within reality capture and drones and the point clouds, and everybody loves the technology, but there's still challenges involved with space and size and time frames, and but data is a big one. How you process the data, how you transfer the data from a client, how you share it with people. So I think we're all looking for more improvement there. That's been pretty universal.
Yeah. And I'm really curious about how the industry starts to adapt to laser scanning and reality capture more, so that the sequence of capturing becomes more frequent, and we start to understand more what is the cause and effect of the built environment phenomena, and that way we can start to prevent like accidents, or not necessarily accidents, but like pipe leaks or structural damages from going very far, and that way start to identify when there is something going wrong, that action is taken more like faster and more earlier on than when using the traditional methods.
Yep, I think that that would be a great spot for the technology to move, just like with the rest of your futuristic idea of having sensors in place, having scanning kind of be a more frequent thing. So yeah, you could run an analysis of new data against your building model on a monthly basis and get highlighted information that'll be sent to maintenance when they notice something's been shifting or there's an earthquake. You could rerun analysis, see what's moved. And catch things like that. Hey, a support broke somewhere we didn't even know, and now this pipe is moving close to this column, or there's information that could definitely be caught. And you see there's accidents all the time. There's building collapse, there's bridge issues, there's anywhere within infrastructure that I think if that monitoring was going on, you could start seeing certain shifts. Structural analysis could be done, and you could know, okay, we need to seriously look at this. This bridge has been starting to move slowly over time. Let's focus on preventative maintenance rather than wait till a collapse happens.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think some of that is getting closer and closer to realistic. The full sensors and building and everything is probably still a ways off, like you said. But I think the monitoring and being able to kind of catch certain things really isn't that far off. And I know that it's a little time consuming and expensive, and it's still a heavy processing. But I think it is being done to an extent on certain critical projects already, which is nice to see. So I think the speed improvement of technology and the laser scanning process, the new computers and things like that are coming out to help process data faster, I think all of those things are going to help it become more realistic.
Yeah. And for those like real estate owners that are considering should they be using reality capture and tracking, is a good reminder to not forget that 85% of the total cost of ownership accumulates post-construction. So everything that we're doing, operating, maintaining in the physical environment, 85% of that cost that that you're paying for. So it makes sense to monitor.
Yeah. And I think, the goal for anybody that owns real estate and multiple buildings or multiple sites, getting to the point that it just becomes normal that everybody has a full virtual asset of whatever physical asset exists. I think that's the mindset we're trying to continue to push, because we also see times that even like right now with what's going on around us, the lack of firms can't travel around as much right now to go visit job sites. They can't, even laser scanning without trying to use someone within driving distance. A lot of people can't fly right now. Now, fast forward 20 years or 30 years and everything's already documented and people have full virtual assets of their buildings, and then a virus comes up that has us shut down and we can't travel. Well, so many more projects and analysis and design and things could continue on because of the virtual tours, the virtual assets, being able to visit certain sites kind of in real time. If it was just scanned for a monthly update, you have almost current information to kind of continue certain work from. So we've seen, even right now, we've seen a big desire in scanning and virtual imagery and panoramic images of sites so that teams can continue to work on construction projects or move into a design phase while they're working from home versus having all these people need to travel and go measure with a tape and take photos. This data, I think, is really continuing to become more and more helpful. And even, with the times we're going through, it's being proven to help reduce cost, help reduce travel, and kind of solve some of those, what we would consider older methodologies and issues. Perfect. Well, thank you again for joining us today. We're excited to get this shared out and continue having you involved in our network. It's been great connecting with you.
Thank you so much, Matthew. This was truly a pleasure to discuss with you.
Yeah, and we, not that it's official, but we might end up doing something here in the future, almost like a live conference where we invite a few different people from different industries to kind of come on a live panel. We know that there's a lot of industry conferences out there that have been canceled or put off, and people were already planning to go because they want to learn, they want to talk about technology. So we're thinking about putting on a little bit of a virtual one, inviting a couple different people to be on a live panel and invite people in for questions and things. So if it's something you're interested in, we might throw that your way and see if you want to join us as well.
Excellent. Sign me up. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Reality Capture Network, bringing the future to you.